Hey everybody, welcome back to the DANCNG SOBR podcast. Thank you once again to Espacio 1839 for allowing us to do our podcast here in this beautiful store on 1839 East 1st Street in the lovely city of Boyle Heights, right next to El Mariachi Plaza. Take the gold line here. It's very simple. Shout out to Picaresca Coffee Roasters because we got our last batch from them. This is our last batch that's coming from Picaresca. This is a medium light roast from Nicaragua. If you're interested, this is only going to be available at the Caminarte that's coming up on August 11th, I think is the date. So check it out. And don't forget, we are listener supported. If you'd like to make a donation, go to Venmo and hit up DANCNG SOBR, DANCNG SOBR at DANCNG SOBR on Venmo. So without further ado, we have a local entrepreneur, a badass. Her name is Corissa Hernandez. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the DANCNG SOBR podcast, and I'm really excited this week to have in the studio Boyle Heights local, Boyle Heights entrepreneur. We practice this. Boyle Heights entrepreneur and chingonapreneur.
Yes.
Corissa Hernandez.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Such an honor.
Likewise, thank you so much. I when Xelas opened and all that was like after I had gone sober, so I never really ventured in there. I went in there once or twice, only just to see how beautiful it was, and I love the setup. I love what you did.
Thank you.
But I never really because back in the days, for real, I was at every bar on this block. I used to be at every bar, from Eastside Love to Palomas to when it was called the M Bar to the pool hall. Yeah, up and down the street. But by the time that you opened, I wasn't drinking anymore. So I never really got to be there, and I never really got to meet you guys, yourself and your partner, who's you're also your husband partner. Yeah. So your life partner and partner in business. So when I finally met you during one of the chamber meetings, I started following you on Instagram, and I was just blown away by all the stuff that you do. And
thank you.
So I was really inspired to bring you on here and share your story. So on this podcast, we like to start the story from the beginning.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, thank you.
I think I shared with you at that chamber meeting where we met each other that you really stood out to me because I don't know if you remembered, but during the peak of the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. When we were feeling so forgotten.
3 girls drinking on the sidewalk.
You know what? And that was literally the first day we were allowed to have a patio. And I feel like you caught this very milestone moment in history, and it just captured all that emotion. It meant a lot to me.
Yeah, so
that picture really inspired me. So thank you for that.
To make it clear, I was walking around doing my daily photos of that year, which was 2020, and you guys were out there.
Yeah.
Just having your first sidewalk beer because they had barely put that patio out there and all that.
It was literally a bench.
Yeah. Right.
It was literally a bench, but those were really hard times for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that you captured such a beautiful
cool. I'll
image.
put the picture here so you can see it.
Yeah, that would be great. But thank you for having me. I like to always start off with saying that I'm the proud daughter of immigrant parents. I think that that's really important in terms of how I've gotten to where I am and recognizing where I come from, where I'm going, and all that good stuff. But just taking it back a little bit, my family immigrated here from Guanajuato, Mexico. And, my grandmother had 7 children. So she came first.
Which was a little back then.
Yeah, seriously. She came first, so she had to leave her kids with her parents. And that was, my mom. So my mom didn't come to this country till she was 12.
Oh, okay.
And so my mom was coming over here. They were a family of 9, and nobody would rent to a family of 9.
Wow.
And Boyle Heights was that neighborhood that with open arms said, welcome home. And so for me, being someone that, we say, no somos ni de aquí ni de allá. Boyle Heights always felt like that's where my roots are. This neighborhood gave us our beginnings in a country that was so foreign to my family. And so I just had this deep appreciation for this neighborhood. Not only was it our family's first home, but the more I learned through school, college really, was how it's the birthplace of the Chicano-Chicana movement, right? And so not only again, going back to being my first home, but just the spirit of the community fighting for the rights that we're, being able to enjoy. We're the product of those movements.
Yeah, I've always said Ball Heights has had a big fighting spirit.
Oh my God, I love it. I absolutely love it. And I really feel like that was kind of ingrained before I even knew it was there, that like passion. So, by the time I came along, we moved. We were in La Puente at the time. Then. So yes, but we ended up moving to La Puente. Okay. So La Puente is where I went to school. I went to Bishop Amat High School.
Okay.
I had strict parents, so they were just kind of like, you're gonna go to school, you're gonna focus on school, and
not get your degrees.
Get your degrees, right? And I think that meant something to me. I understood their struggle, their sacrifice. They were very open about talking about what it was like to have been brought to a country as kids. Their immigrant experience was a little different in the sense that it wasn't their choice. Both my mom and dad were brought at age 12. And so they had this deep longing for their country, this like deep love of their friends, their culture, their food, everything they ever knew. And they didn't want us to lose that. So every summer, and I recognize my privilege in this, but every summer they would send my brother and I to Mexico with my grandmother so that we wouldn't lose our Spanish, that we would be proud of where we came from. And, as a kid, you're like, I don't want to go over there. I want to stay here. And you get older, you're like, how do I spend every summer in Mexico?
Like that Tigres del Norte song?
Yeah.
Yo no quiero ir a Mexico, pa.
That's exactly what it was like. But, I think that the underlying lessons that were learned out there were just kind of that pride of where your roots are, right?
The culture, yeah. Pride
the culture.
Yeah.
So
just maybe knowing your parents' history helped you in that a lot, yeah.
Yes. And so I've always grown up being really proud and really confident in being, a Mexicana, Americana, Chicana. So those things meant a lot. But going through high school...
What were your parents doing as far as to earn a living when you were young?
So, my dad was working for automotive industry. He managed to promote himself or move up into the director of service department. And then my mom actually worked for 30 plus years for the county of Los Angeles in the small business licensing department.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and I'm like, lady, do you know how hard it is out here?
Well, that was meant to be.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah. So, we were from a working class family. They worked hard. And we recognized the sacrifices they were making to, get us through the education that we had. That meant something to me. In high school, I was just kind of going along the movements, like, oh, I guess I have to do my homework so I don't get in trouble. So there's really no deep passion there. And it wasn't until I got to college, and that was Cal Poly Pomona.
Okay.
Cal Poly Pomona had some of the dopest professors in the sociology department and the gender, ethnic, multicultural studies department.
What year was this?
So I started at Cal Poly Pomona in 1999. 90s.
Yeah. I kind of want to go back a little bit because I always ask everybody, and I forgot to ask, when you were a teenager, what kind of trouble did you ever get into? Were you a...
I always told my parents I was such a good kid. They had it so easy with me, and they were so strict. You would think they had some crazy rebel child. But I was in band. I love reading as a hobby. I was that kid. I was nerdy.
What were you reading back then?
What was I reading back then? I don't think it was anything significant. I just kind of liked reading...
whatever the teen series books.
Yes. At that time in high school.
Pat's Sisterhood or something.
The Babysitter's Club. That's embarrassing. Don't bring up.
No, that's fun. I love that kind of stuff because that's the kind of stuff I used to just throw the books at my daughter and she would just go through them. I love that stuff.
I feel like maybe because I was in such a strict household. Mind you, my grandparents also lived with us, so my grandma felt like she had authority too, which she did. In our culture, it takes a village to raise kids. So I think my escape was just reading these
The little
fictional-
tiny romances that are in there, hidden in there, yeah.
Just escaping reality.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, but when I got to Cal Poly Pomona, I think that's when I started becoming very conscious, like socially conscious, learning about Chicano history, understanding the discrepancies that exist in society and why certain systems are in place and the systemic injustices. And so
It's mind blowing, right? When you
oh my
first
God,
start to
I just felt like
have
this
your eyes opened.
spark of like something I always knew was there, but didn't understand.
You didn't have the language for it or like the words for it.
That's what it
yeah.
was.
You didn't know how to name it, like they say,
That's exactly
put a name
what it
to it,
was.
and then when you put a name to it and an understanding behind it, you're like, oh,
Yes.
I see what's happening here. I see why I can't move forward or whatever.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So I was just like really moved to join student organizations. So I was one of the chairs of MECHA.
No way.
We were like
yeah.
raising hell on campus. Oh my God, those were the days. It's like raising hell on campus, advocating for students of color and access to higher education.
Remind me again what year?
We started 99, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I graduated
Yeah,
high
that
school
was
in
a
98. Yeah.
Pretty like political
Oh,
time.
totally,
Yeah.
totally. So, it was really active, not just on campus, but in the community. And that activism led me to apply for this summer labor program through the UCLA Labor Center. And that was life-changing. That moment right there changed my life because I was accepted into this program. And so what the program was, it was a summer-long program where they were training you on being a community organizer, but taking it further by placing you in different labor organizations, labor union organizations.
As an intern.
So I didn't realize how blessed I was at the time until I started just kind of being exposed to it when I got placed with Justice for Janitors. And I learned from the best. Like,
And that was during the big
Yes.
strike, right? Yeah,
yes,
I remember that.
I was there, involved in these meetings, learning about how they organize and how they mobilize. And it was just something that today I still utilize in my businesses on organization and, how you plan things and keep things in order. Yeah. It was amazing. It was such an amazing experience. And I think just tying what I was learning in theory in the classrooms and having hands-on real life experiences out in the community just kind of,
solidified it more, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you were at Cal Poly and doing this at the UCLA Labor Center.
Yeah.
Wow. And you were living in La Puente.
So, no, at that time I was...
Hope you had a good car back then.
I didn't. Oh my God, I had this
Jesus.
like Pontiac Grand Am where
That's nice. What are you talking
no,
about?
it was like an
Convertible?
older. No, I wish. It was like an older model, and like the passenger seat wouldn't like
God.
lock, so
Yeah.
it would like you hit
Always
the brakes
move
and it
back
was
and
like.
I know what you're talking about.
And I still had friends who were like, I don't care, I'm down to ride. But yeah, so those were really interesting years. And during that time, I actually had this professor that, again, these like life-changing moments were all happening at the same time. And so I feel bad because I forget this professor's name, but he had such a big impact with just like this one interaction I'm about to share. I wish I could thank him for it, but I honestly don't remember his name. But it was a course, I think, on indigenismo. And the class was significantly large, so I didn't think at the time that professors really cared about their students and who's in the classroom. There's so many of us in there. And, these are the 90s, so we were still getting used to computers.
Yeah.
And so I forgot to write my name on my homework assignment that I was about to turn in. And it was a little crumpled, so kind of like ironing it out with my forearm. And then I scribbled my name on it. I went up there to turn it in. And I remember the look he gave me, just like, and then he shook his head at me. And then he tells me, like, looking at me, it's like his look touched my soul.
Wow.
And he was just like, I need you to understand one thing. From this moment forward, it's not about you anymore.
Yeah.
You represent an entire community.
Wow.
I don't know Like,
Was he a Brown teacher?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. He really wanted you to.
but I mean, for anyone, it would have just been like, oh yeah, whatever, dude. But for me,
It hit you.
it was like this light went off.
Yeah.
And since then, I honest to God, performed to that level.
We have these receptors, and if all of them are ignited at one point, little tiny things like that happen,
Yeah,
little tiny
I
things
believe
like that just like they get locked into the memory banks, and just I mean, the way that you explain it is exactly like
Yeah.
what I can see it
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
That's intense.
It was.
And
It
you were
was.
probably like 19, 20?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just like, the way I performed just changed completely, because I feel like high school is just going through the motions.
Mm-hmm.
But from that moment forward, with all these events compacted, it was like, no, we're doing this. Like, there's a greater purpose here, and we gotta advocate for one another and perform at a different level. And so I really got into my involvement in the community, my grades, and so I positioned myself to be accepted to UCLA for a master's program. And it was just from that passion, like, no, I'm a statistic. I'm gonna be a positive statistic. I think it's I don't even know the statistic anymore, but I feel like at the time it was like 0.3% of Latinas had master's degrees.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't common back then.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, I think
it's gone up a little bit. So shout
it's gone
out.
up a lot. Thankfully, I mean, it's gone up a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but shout out to people like yourself who have done it. Who did it in the past, and now it's like.
Thank you.
I think most of the youth now that get their bachelors hopefully go straight into their masters. But yeah, I mean, and I came from an era when it was like you just had to graduate from high school, and if you don't, it's cool.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like there's huge steps that have changed the way that we see that degree, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do during that time. Your parents just tell you what they mean well, but my parents were immigrants.
Yeah.
They just knew
didn't know
to
anything.
say go to school. And I was like, well, what do I study?
So what I told my daughter, because I didn't have the full college experience, I told her, look, you don't have to go to school, but if you don't go to school, you better hustle hard. You're going to have to hustle hard to get the things that I know that you like in life. And if you do go to school, the employers are learning, they're getting you because they know that you can follow instructions, you can report when you have to report, you have a good understanding of projects and timelines, and can get something assigned and finish it within a certain, parameter.
Yeah, that's amazing.
All those things that you learn in school, it doesn't always really matter what you're studying, because she also didn't know what to study. So I was like, you don't have to know what you're going to study, but just kind of go for it and learn the structure of, making reports, I guess.
Yeah,
and stuff
no,
like
I
that.
agree with that. And that's good advice, because sometimes, people get too stuck on, well, what am I going to study? When in the end, you end up somewhere completely
different. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it was just kind of like, well, Mom, Dad, I'm going to take a year off to figure out what I need to do, because if I'm going to invest in higher education, it was on me to pay for that. I got to really feel like I know what I want to do.
Yeah, so at this point then, if you were going to get the master's, it was up to you to pay it. You were already, maybe you had a job somewhere and you were trying to.
So my job, my dream job, and I still love them even though they didn't hire me. I'm still very close to the organization. For me, my dream was to work with inner city struggle.
Okay.
It was just such a dream. At the time, they still are doing a lot of work around educational equity on the east side. For me, it was very reflective of the work that started in the 60s. And so I was like, hell yeah, this is what I'm meant to do. We're going to continue this movement. And so I didn't get the job, and I was distraught. So I was like, what am I going to do?
What position were you applying for?
I believe at the time they were hiring
bring up old
for
wounds,
I know, I'm crying. I think it was organizer at one of the campuses.
Okay.
But I was just so in admiration of that organization that I was like, okay, I didn't get hired, but I want to volunteer time. So they had just started their family program where they were empowering parents around how to advocate for themselves and their children. So I was in the beginning phases of working with them for that. And then the other thing that I thought, okay, well, I think I want to be an attorney. So I had applied at MALDEF too, and they were like, no, you don't have enough experience. I'm like, well, duh, I was in school for the last few years, working like little jobs to get through school. So I ended up volunteering with them as well. And, you know, I learned a lot from both organizations, and they tipped me off.
You would have made a good attorney.
Oh, thank you. I know. Yeah. That was just like, at the time, it didn't feel right. You know, like I respect the work that they did, but it was just like, oh, you know what, this isn't for me. And so I'm grateful that I had that experience, because had I gone, you know, through law school, maybe I wouldn't have liked them. Think about how much money that is. So they tipped me off that Impacto through Proyecto Pastoral was hiring. And that was my first official job out of college here in Boyle Heights.
Wow.
You see all that? Like Boyle Heights just gave me so much foundation.
And still gives.
100%. So like it's hard for me to like ever think not being part of this community. So Impacto was my early career beginnings, and I learned that I really loved working with kids and you know, especially the youth in the local community, teaching them to be empowered. I'm still close with a lot of students I worked with there. And so I decided to become a teacher, and I went to UCLA to get my master's in education and my teaching credential. Wow. Yeah, and I was on my way to be a teacher.
I was wondering when that was, like, how you got to being that, because I know that you had time as a teacher, and I was like,
life has led me everywhere.
You're doing all these like hardcore organizing things, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to be a teacher. Yeah. And how did that go? Or
I loved it. I love teaching. I really wanted to get hired at Hohenbeck. There were no openings. So Belvedere hired me.
I went to Belvedere.
Oh, no way. How cool.
1983 to 86.
Just a little bit before I was there.
I'm sure. That was a long time ago.
So, yeah, Belvedere. So you're familiar with the campus. I taught at Belvedere Middle School. And I loved it. I loved working with the kids. You know, one thing that I think started discouraging me was how the curriculum can sometimes be a setup for our kids to fail. And that didn't settle well with me. And so, you know, I try to bring in my own curriculum as much as possible, because my master's thesis was actually using social conscious hip hop in a language arts classroom. And so I try to implement that a lot.
Like throwing Hamilton at these kids.
But through my thesis, it proved successful. I mean, we're talking about kids.
Yeah, of course.
Who aren't, you know.
This is a story that I've never told on this podcast. I mean, it's not a big story, but when I was like 15, whatever, I've always been into hip hop. I like to tell people I was born before hip hop and watched it birth and watched it happen.
Cool. I love that.
When I was young, I had a little friend who was a few years younger than me that could not memorize his ABCs, and I put them into a rap.
That's so cool.
And after that, like, he had no problems after that. He learned the rap.
That is so cool.
And he learned his ABCs,
Yeah, but I mean,
through hip-hop.
That's an example, you know? And so the argument I made was that our youth aren't validated in classrooms. They don't feel seen. Like, you can't have them read about Huckleberry Finn and expect them to understand that.
Relate.
Or relate and, like, pick up on...
There's been a few movies, like, I mean, this reminds me of when I go to see certain movies now, and they're, especially, like, the Cheetos movie that I just saw. It's so different just to see, like, your own people represented. And even, like, from the opening scene or whatever, sometimes you're, like, just, like, you're like, inspired and, like, you're out of breath because you can't believe, like, oh my God, that's, like, us, you know?
Totally.
It moves you immediately.
It's empowering.
Representation, man.
Yeah, 100%.
So even though we enjoyed those books and we enjoyed the stories, it had nothing at all to do with us.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about some youth that maybe experienced something the night before and has to come to the classroom with a little bit of trauma, and you're expecting them to be like fully bought into the curriculum. It's like, it doesn't work that way sometimes, you know? So it's like, how are we culturally sensitive and really empower our youth? So I had a hard time with the curriculum. But at the time, my dad was getting ready to retire after 30 plus years of working for this automotive industry that he was such a dedicated, not just family man, but employee. Like, he worked for this company as if it were his own. And so it's hard to watch someone perform at that level to where the day they decide to leave, they're left with nothing. And so for me, I was just kind of like, wait, what happened?
That's crazy.
Yeah, like, what happened?
30,
How did he not
years.
have a pension? How did he not have a 401k? Like, how did nobody talk to him about how to save? He really believed Social Security was going to be, you know, most of our community thinks, oh, Social Security is how you retire. And so I watched this man that was just a proud man. My dad was proud and he was elegant. I mean, my dad was my hero. You know, fall into depression, you know? And so that was hard for me. And I was just like, no, there's something that was wrong. And so someone who was just starting her career is like, I need to make sure that I have a pension, that I have a way to save for when the day I don't want to work anymore. And so that's what started piquing my interest in financial literacy. I just started kind of like reading and learning. And I learned enough to intrigue myself. And I was like, well, I've learned so much, I might as well get licensed and manage my own accounts. And so I started studying to get licensed. You know, I was fresh out of my master's program, so my brain was still like a sponge.
And it just feels like also like all of these things that you had already worked on, like the organizing and you know, like caring about the people and all these things all came together. And then seeing your dad just.
Oh, I never thought about it like that. I always felt like, oh, this girl just jumped around. But
No, I mean,
she can't sit still.
Life is cyclical, you know, so we like go through these circles, but they always like kind of like loop again.
I love that. Yeah, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
That's cool. Thank you for that.
Oh, no.
I'm going to start saying that. It's just like, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I got licensed and I started.
So explain to me a little bit about that company. And this is the first company that you formed yourself.
Yes.
Right? And this was your first entrepreneurial venture.
So Legacy Full Circle.
Full Circle. I always forget the second part. Legacy Full Circle. And this is inspired by your dad and inspired by wanting to help the community grow, or not just grow, but learn how to push it for the future, I guess, or
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, how would you explain it?
So it's the first business that my husband and I opened together. We weren't even married at the time, but we just like felt so passionate about it. But
real quick, what was his background in? He actually worked in.
He was like a regional general manager of a fitness club.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, he worked in gyms.
So he was managing.
He was managing, and then he had his story as to how he got involved in financial industry. So we were both he was already working for a company, and then I got licensed. We met at an airport. We were just kind of like shared the interest in financial services. And so I pitched them, and I was like, because he had his own agency too. And I pitched them, and I was like, hey, you know, I'm a teacher. There's a lot of teachers who need help with their finances. Like, I feel like I started a little side business without the intention of having a side business. So I did get busy enough to be like, okay, I need to make a decision here. So then we both together decided to open our own financial firm that would focus on Spanish-speaking, middle-income families, women, educators. And so what we do is we raise awareness around how money works, number one, you know, like looking at your spending habits. Do you have a spending plan? And then easy concepts around generational wealth. I think it's like this trend topic, but no one really knows other than, I think you're supposed to get real estate to create generational wealth. Yes, you do.
That's one way, yeah.
But there's other ways that are a lot more attainable.
But that is what everybody thinks of.
Everyone thinks that. So we count ourselves out sometimes. It's like, by the time I get a house, when it's easier than that. There's little steps to take that are very attainable to start creating generational wealth, and it's not talked about enough in our community. And the times they are, unfortunately, people have had bad experiences because
I'm just laughing. I'm sorry. I'm laughing because there's some kids playing next door. So if you guys hear this like yelling and screeching as these kids playing next door, I'm so sorry for that. It's the first time that happens. Usually we get a paletero and
I love that.
A siren, but not.
But I feel like the kids playing's on brand. We're like,
it's on brand. Yeah.
We're talking about being teachers and, and being the community.
What would you say is like the first step for like somebody who has never done anything to like save money or think of the future at all?
It's as easy as taking like a real-time snapshot of your current cash flow. And what does that mean? Look at how much money you're bringing in and observe how much money is going out. But itemize it. Okay, I spent this much. They're called fixed expenses. So your fixed expenses are things you can't control. Your rent, food, utilities. Right. Yeah. And then you looked at your variable expenses is the next step. And that's stuff you can't control. Partying, movies. Shopping, movies, that kind of stuff. Now, it's not about cutting out all the fun either. It's about balance, right?
I think even just looking at it.
Yeah.
Just looking at it and then being like, wait a minute, I've been doing what?
It happens every time. Yeah. That's like the first step. Well, actually, the first step we take is listing all your goals. Like, what are your goals, short-term, long-term? Because a lot of people feel that the savings account at the bank is the way to save, and it's the worst way to save. Okay. You're actually losing money. It's not keeping up with inflation. The bank's giving you 0.01%. Inflation's like 2 to 3%. In some cases, like we've seen recently, 8%. So your money already lost value. So it's like, what vehicles are out there, like high yield savings accounts, and how do you take advantage of them? But the next step is looking at how am I spending? And let's readjust.
I want to send my daughter to you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. But you'd be surprised how much money you actually are supposed to have at the end of the month that you can start really changing the narrative for our community. Yeah. Right now, unfortunately, a lot of our community sees something as simple as life insurance as taboo. Like, oh no, eso no. Yeah. If I talk about it, it's going to happen tomorrow. Yeah. When other communities see it as, okay, I need to get this much coverage right off the bat. I had grandchildren, let me get them life insurance. It's like, it's already a habit, a healthy habit. For us, when we don't have that, we're creating GoFundMes or car washes, we're creating a cycle of debt. We're passing on debt to the next generation. And that needs to change, Yeah. It's happened in our family. I'm not here making anyone feel bad about it, but it's more about raising awareness about how we need to change our relationship with money. We deserve to have wealth.
I'm someone who has a really bad relationship with money. So
well, you're not alone, so don't feel bad. It's just a few adjustments. It's really that easy. Yeah. I think it's getting over that fear, that initial discomfort. It's like ripping off the Band-Aid, and then you start feeling really good and empowered, and things start to change. Yeah.
Like I don't want to get into my personal stuff, but
it's your
we'll talk about that after. I mean, I don't want to get into my personal finances.
I understand.
But yeah, definitely. I do want to talk to you more about this. And I mean, this is something that I just discovered recently about you too, that you had this company. I didn't know that you also did this financial work.
Oh, too. Yeah.
And you also have gone as far as now teaching this. Like you have so many videos online.
Yes.
Teaching this to people. It's amazing.
Yeah. I believe in accessibility. I went back to school recently. It was something I had to put off during the pandemic.
Más escuela?
Mira, I know. I'm like, sometimes I look in the mirror, I'm like, are you crazy? Yeah. But for me, it's great. It was a
I think it's
personal
amazing,
goal.
yeah.
You know, it's very hard. I'm not going to lie. It's very, very intensive and challenging. And I question myself every day. But it was one of those goals that I had to put on hold because of the pandemic. And I'll get into that story a little bit. I'll see if I can do it without crying. This is such a crazy time for a lot of people, right? But because I had to put this goal off, I felt like my bar businesses were finally in a place that didn't need all of me, where I can revisit this goal. And it was to get my certified financial planning, certificate from UCLA. It's an extended university. But just being in the class with the people who pursue these types of certificates, the conversations are so different about the people they're working with. And it's all about how to position their already rich clients to keep making money, to hide money, to have tax strategies. And I'm like, why aren't we having these kind of conversations in our neighborhoods? You know what I mean? And so for me, I'm just like sitting there. And even painful. As someone in the industry, it's hard to keep up because I don't have these conversations as often other than when I'm in class with these people. So I believe in accessibility, making sure that this information is getting to neighborhoods like Boyle Heights.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so with this certificate, it allows you to...
So that certificate, I feel for me, it's just exposing me to these types of conversations, number one. The curriculum is just some of the best financial advisors in the country are teaching at UCLA about, tax strategies, about investment options, about... so the way certified financial planning works is you would come to me, give me all your goals, and then I, at that point, can charge for putting together a whole map for you of like, hey, this is how you do things.
A strategy.
It's a strategy. Yeah. So.
Or a frame, I guess, right?
Yeah. The financial services industry is interesting. It's just all kinds of licenses you acquire. Yeah. It gives you access to different types of investment vehicles. Got it. I could get into that, but we'll get real boring.
That's another like rabbit hole of finance.
We don't need to know all that.
I mean, we do need to know it,
yes,
but go to your website.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm also like deeply like interested, but I also don't know where to take that next question. But I appreciate that.
Yeah, no,
we'll
for
talk about that after. Yeah.
I think that going back to how we ended up with so many businesses, it was we're doing financial literacy, financial services. It could be real serious. It's not like an exciting topic for people. So on the weekends, we used to like to drink craft beer. We got into that.
What's your
craft
hobby?
Beer phase.
Drinking.
But it was just kind of like exploring what craft beer was doing during the time. I think we were getting in right as the boom was happening. But what really drew me more so than the beer to that industry was that for the first time, at least, I mean, I can't speak on historical statistics or anything like that, but for me, in my observation, for the first time, the small guys were giving the big guys a run for their money.
Yeah.
Like Budweiser was nervous.
Yeah. And they all tried making their little craft beer.
Yeah, they were buying out whoever was willing to sell it so that they
people.
can pretend to be craft. And so for me, I was like, this is so dope. Like, this is amazing that a mom pop with real talent has a fighting chance to like really do something big. Yeah. So that's when we started kind of entering that
Did you guys start making your own, or you started just...
No, we never brewed. Our first concept was actually like retail. So it's kind of like a retail shop, bottle shop, where we sold craft beer only. So we didn't sell none of the big conglomerates. Like for me, I wanted to support the mom pop breweries. I feel that these big businesses usually come in, create problems for our neighborhoods, and never give back. So I don't, at all my bars, you'll never see a big name in terms of beer. And so that one, we had the retail and a small little bar in the back. And so it was like this really cool experience. You walk in, you open a fridge, take it to the bar, we pour it out.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. But we made a lot of mistakes. Yeah, that was we made a lot of mistakes opening our first business.
Mistakes are good.
Yeah,
Learning.
If you take the mistakes and you're like, well, what can I learn from this? I think a lot of people enter entrepreneurship thinking there's a lot of glitz and glam and it's amazing. Yeah. But there's a lot of challenges. So you have to like be in that mental space where it's like, okay, what do I learn from this?
When you're the entrepreneur, you like they say, you get to see how the sausage is made, and it's not pretty.
Yes.
It's not pretty to kill a pig, skin it, pull its guts out, put it inside of it, you know?
That's exactly how I feel.
Or whatever it is, like, you know, you get to see if it's something else, you get to see, like, I mean, if
final
it's...
product.
Yeah, you get to see, like, the mess that happens before you make the pretty thing that everybody else sees, you know?
It's so true.
There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff
It's so true. And it goes back to not having, you know, rich parents or that aunt and uncle that are business owners that are successful that can coach you. It's just trial and error.
Yeah.
You trial and error your way through it. Yeah. And so
sink or swim. And then sometimes you sink and then you have to you're forced to swim out of it. Yeah.
That's a dang truth. So yeah, we started our first bar was in Eagle Rock.
Okay. What was that one called?
I prefer not to say.
Okay.
It was a franchise, and it was just a terrible experience. I did not want to market for them.
That's cool then. I mean, that's a good way to start it because you kind of get the package.
Yeah. So that's
the structure.
That's what you think. Yeah. And so for me, it was like, okay, we're going to take this risk. Let's be calculated about it. Let's team up with someone who knows what they're doing and franchise it. For me, I have a lot to say about franchises. I think they can be good if you ask all the right questions in the beginning. But if you don't know what to ask, you might end up in a really bad situation.
Got it.
And that's what happened with us at that time. A bad lease. I mean, we were rookies. Yeah. We were rookies. Even the way we funded it was terrible. And so, again, these are just kind of like mental notes that you're taking that you're like, this was kind of unfair. Right? Like, this wasn't fair. Like, why do we have to, like, figure stuff out and it's all or nothing?
Yeah.
You know, like for some people it's like, oh, you tried that out, that was cute, try something else now. For us it's like, that's it.
I can imagine you probably went into it thinking, okay, this is what we do, go. This is what we do, go. This is what we do, go. Just like listening to people's directions, but without.
Yeah, so you're right. It was a lot of copying. So it's like, okay, so craft beer, the breweries look like this. That's probably what people like. Let's put wood everywhere. Yeah, let's put refurbished wood everywhere. You know, they like the beer signs everywhere. So it wasn't really a reflection of us, like what we know how to do. Yeah. It was just kind of like a replication. Yeah, like, oh, let's replicate. So we had that, and probably about 2 years after, we opened another beer bar in Burbank.
Okay.
And that was called Empire Tavern.
Okay.
So we had that. We partnered with one of our managers from the first bar. And so that was really exciting. And there we had, you know, a lot more experience, so we knew a little bit more what to do. But still, we were still kind of like, oh, well, the woodwork that the other bar is doing here too. And then I remember having a conversation with my husband, and I was like, you know, I really want to do something in the neighborhoods that you know, provided so much for us. Yeah. And I want to do this as a form of a thank you, like, to pay homage to the neighborhood. And I remember at that time, there was an article that came out that was talking about First Street Mariachi Plaza. And they were talking about Las Palomas. And they named the landlord. And I was like, immediately, like, I need to know who this landlord is. I need to talk to him. We need to talk to him.
Felix? I forgot his name. I think it was Felix.
Well, they're brothers. Yeah, it's a group of brothers. Okay. They're the Boyle Heights Company.
Oh, the building owner was somebody else. Anyways.
Yeah. So, long story short, we were able to meet with him. And it took about 2 years of conversations. And he finally came back and was like, I think I have a spot for you. And I think you're going to like it. It's not Palomas, but it's across the street. And I was like, oh my God, I manifested this. I freaking manifested it. And it happened to be where Xelas is now.
Okay.
I mean, as soon as I walked in, I was like, this is it. This is where we need to be. I want to be here. And so my husband and I were really excited to finally be able to do what represented us, what represents our community.
Yeah. Something that felt more organic and not like...
Yeah. Oh, yeah, where it wasn't like, a little beer sign there. No.
Yeah.
I think that being intentional and true to who you are goes much farther. I think I read this quote, and I might be misquoting it, but it was something in regards to lean into your community, and your community will be there for you. So with Xelas, I wanted it to be an homage to Boyle Heights and to Guanajuato.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So if you go into the space, you'll see that we have very rustic furniture that we actually got custom made in Mexico. So we went to Guanajuato and went to the bars out there. And we wanted to see, okay, what does it look like here? Because we want to bring that to LA. We brought the tiles from Mexico.
Nice.
And then we were like, okay, we need that Boyle Heights flavor, right?
I need that neon sign.
Yeah, we wanted the neon sign. We're, if you know anyone from Boyle Heights, they are proud to be from Boyle Heights. Yeah. Oh my God, it's like a whole other level. Don't call it East LA. It's Boyle Heights. But we, having had a relationship with Homeboy Industries, I was already aware of Fabian Devora. And I knew he did the mural outside. So I was like, will you do us the honor of doing the murals inside our space? Because I can't think of a better way to honor the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Local artist who does so much for the community. So Fabian came in and did all our murals. And we felt like that was the touch with Boyle Heights.
Okay. I didn't know that he did the inside too. That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. And he did them at Nativo too.
Okay.
All our murals are Fabian. Yeah. We
That's
wanted
cool.
to keep it very community.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool.
And how has I know you've now we have to get into the pandemic because the time that you opened and everything,
We opened in 2018. The community showed up. The community showed up.
Yeah.
It was popping in Xelas. It was funny because we named it Xelas because it was a craft beer bar. Xelas is slang for beer. And so we were like, oh, it'll be a chill beer bar. We just want to have little tables for people to eat and drink.
People come party and it turns into a dance.
Oh my God, they were just move the tables, bring the DJ, where's the reggaeton? And I was like, okay, we're doing this. And it was every weekend got more and more packed with people dancing. So we slowly became this dance hall. Yeah. And I was okay with it. It felt good. It reminded me of growing up and, your family getting together and all the
impromptu parties.
Yeah. So it was good times. It was really good times. We were really happy with Xelas. Not that we're not right now, but when the pandemic hit, I remember it was just kind of, we don't open on Sundays. So that Sunday, I think it was noon, the mayor came on TV and he was just oh, by tonight, midnight, all bars need to close. And I remember feeling so confused. What does that mean? What does it mean for our business? We had sold everything we ever acquired, including my husband's childhood home.
Wow.
Those are my in-laws' sacrifices. My parents, whatever they were able to save, those were my parents. These are generations that made this happen. So for us, we're just what's going to happen? And through the entire pandemic, we just felt forgotten, this industry of the whole block. There was a moment, I remember, I even cried because I was just this is terrible that we're being forgotten like this. But there was a moment where all the First Street businesses were closed. And I swear, this sounds like a scene out of a movie, and I'm not making it up, but there was a tumbleweed.
I was walking around a lot. Oh, really?
Tumbleweed. And I was like, wow, we're really here.
Wow.
We are really here. This is scary.
Oh, my God.
So we went through 4 shutdowns. 4. And I think that when local officials are disconnected from their community, disconnected from small businesses, it creates a situation where it seems easy to be like, we'll shut down and then reopen, like in a day's notice. And what they don't know is that with every reopening was like starting from scratch again. Like your team had to do what they had to do. God bless them, they went their ways. And so these teams that were like family to us, I wasn't going to be mad at because they decided to go into another industry or, you know.
They had to move on.
Yeah. So it took a toll on my mental health. So I was like, you know, if I have to be strong for my team and my businesses, because this is our livelihood, I need to get therapy. So I was doing therapy once a week. I decided to get very clean with my eating. I prioritized my physical health, and I was just like prioritizing health, mental health. And then I became so aware of the importance of mental health when it comes to entrepreneurship, and especially when a pandemic hits. And then again, I think that was the moment this activist in me just reignited. Because sometimes when you're busy in the hustle, it kind of like quiets down a little bit. You're in the movement, you're focused on, you know, getting your business where it needs to be. But in the face of adversity and no one showing up for you, and you're seeing it happen in communities of color and people of color and women-owned businesses aren't being taken care of, then you're like, someone needs to advocate. We need to organize. And y'all don't know that your girl knows how to organize.
Another circle comes around.
So yeah, that's where I took to, you know, really creating, you know, there's a lot of silver linings that came out of the pandemic. One of them being that it created this beautiful community within small businesses. Here on First Street, we have our First Street Small Business Association. We just got so close during the pandemic. We were just checking on each other.
Yeah.
We went through so much.
I'm sure.
We had to keep each other like motivated. And whenever a resource would come up, it's like, hey, did you hear about this? Hey, I remember there was a moment at Casa Fina where they were like, how much are they charging you for your patio? And I was like, no, they're not charging. Let me show you how to do this.
So they got theirs.
Yeah, so like we were helping each other out here. So I did appreciate that. But I got a lot to say about other stuff.
Yeah. Well, you're on. Go for it. No.
Well, I mean, I did join, I did get invited to join organizations that focus on advocacy for small businesses. So I sit on the California Council for Small Businesses with the Small Business Majority. I sit on the board for the Independent Hospitality Coalition that looks out for restaurants and bars in LA.
How do you have time for all this?
I don't, but I just like, if we don't do something, you know, ain't nobody showing up for us.
Yeah, I know.
You know?
Oh, it's so tough.
It's just kind of like what it is to be a BIPOC female entrepreneur.
Leader. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah. So here we are.
And after all that. And I imagine during all that and during your health consciousness and all this, taking care of yourself is when Nativo was born?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, that a lot of people like to ask, like, what made you want to open a bar during a pandemic? I'm like, we didn't. So thank you for asking. It allows me to share the story there. We had actually sold our first bar in October of 2019. And we ended up buying Nativo in November of 2019. This was before we knew a pandemic was headed towards us.
Jesus.
So we were in escrow, and it was a significant amount that goes into escrow. And so when we heard that the pandemic was a real thing, like we're shut down, we called to try and pull out of the deal.
Damn.
They're like, you can, but you lose your down.
Damn.
We're not in a position to do that. So it's like, all right, well, I guess we're doing this.
Yeah.
You know? And so I think that I've talked about this before, where I credit that immigrant spirit of you just have to figure it out. You're used to facing challenges.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, here's a challenge. Well, it is what it is. Figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's just the immigrant spirit. And I credit that a lot for how we got through the pandemic. It was like, well, this is a situation. We've been here before. We're going to figure this out. We're going to figure it out.
You guys are two very smart people too, I think.
Thank you.
Undetermined.
I think the determination can sometimes. Yeah.
Or blind faith sometimes is like, it's going to work.
Yes.
Because we say it is.
Yeah, because, I mean, and again, going back to immigrant spirit, is just like having hope and faith.
Yeah.
You know, hope and faith and like believing. And I mean, for me, I'm very close to Dolores Mission community, and they were there big time. I mean, when I was having mental breakdowns, I'd reach out and have conversations with them. And I don't know, for me, it's again, that community that shows up for you. Like, what can we do? Let's do this together. I would call out on the community Boyle Heights. You know, we had to be extremely vulnerable on social media platforms and be like, hey guys, if y'all don't show up, we don't think we're gonna make it. And then we'd have a line. And I mean, I cry when I talk about this because it just moves me that much. It's like we want each other to win. Yeah. We want to see each other on the other side. So all of that's silver linings to a pandemic. It was a very, very, very challenging time. I think I still have some trauma from it, to be very honest with you.
I think we all carry still a lot of pandemic trauma in our everyday still, even though we come out here and we smile. We definitely have some remnants of 2020.
Yeah, that's so true. Sometimes, like, I think it's 2023. I'm like, what the hell happened? Like, how did we get to 2023? When did that happen?
So now, in the position that you're in, and with your businesses, how's everything going, and how do you plan to move forward? Or
you know, I hate when I hear people say that they're self-made. I mean, more power to them. Maybe they are. But I'm community made. Yeah. You know, like, I wouldn't be here, and it goes back to Boyle Heights being the one that welcomed my family. Yeah. And so we learned how to create community, not just within the community, but in our own businesses, right? So I credit my teams a lot. They make me look good. Yeah. A lot of people are like, how do you do all this? I'm like, I don't. I have amazing teams that they do their thing and they make me look good, and I want them to get all the credit.
Surround yourself with smart people.
100%. Like, you surround yourself with people whose strengths are your weaknesses. And so shout out to all the amazing people I get to call my extended family. And so because we've gotten to a place where Legacy Full Circle, you know, Gabe and I partnered with my brother. So my brother is just this amazing business person that, you know, manages a team, doesn't need us. We just show up to, like, feel like we're needed. We have a great team at Xelas, a great team at Nativo. So it was really an opportunity that allowed us to get back to creating these workshops where we're doing financial literacy again. And we've added to that small business consulting and advocating. Yeah. So that's where you'll see a lot of information on my Instagram talking about, like, you know, how we can take care of each other. And
shout out the website and Instagram right now, and I'll put it in the bottom.
Oh, thank you. It's actually my personal website. It's www.corissa, Corissa Hernandez.com. And then my Instagram's the same, at Corissa Hernandez. At Corissa Hernandez. Okay. But yeah, you know, like right now, I'm working with Homeboy Industries doing their youth entrepreneur program for the summer. So, you know, it feels good to marry my teaching background and my entrepreneur background.
So what kind of, what age groups are you teaching?
So they're about 16 to 18 years old.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just seeing the level of engagement, I mean, obviously not all of them are going to be as engaged, but the level of engagement that you see just is a testament to why accessibility is so important. You know, and especially talking about the youth from Homeboy. These are youth that may not be able to go the traditional job route. Yeah. So it's teaching them how to create opportunities for themselves that they may not have thought was possible for themselves.
That was what I was going to say, was just seeing other options.
Yes.
Like than just the route that you've been told.
Exactly.
You know, there's, you know, either you're going to be this or go to jail or, you know, if you don't do that. But no, there's other options. There's a million options.
And I feel that entrepreneurship is empowerment, you know, and maybe some of them may actually start that clothing brand, you know, or that makeup line that they're talking about.
I like to consider myself a little bit of an entrepreneur, and I've started a few ventures, but it's always like I work at a snail's pace. Like everything, I just kind of like work slow, and I never worry about making money, which is bad for an entrepreneur.
I think it's okay.
It's horrible. It's not good. It's not good, I'm telling you. But I've been trying to change my relationship to that and understand why I feel that way and understand why I don't worry about it, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm too old now, you know?
No, you're not.
I mean, I'm not too old, but I have to make some kind of change, so.
Yeah.
We'll see,
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's fulfilling a passion.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm good at. I'm good at working on my passions. But
I think fulfillment is sometimes...
it's a different happiness.
Yeah, I think it's extremely undervalued, and especially in a capitalist society.
So I used to work, you know, suit and tie.
No way.
Yeah, out of high school, I was a paralegal.
No way.
Yeah, and then I met the chamber and all that because I used to work for Barrio Planners, and I was also a business assistant rep. Yeah. So I did all that in the beginning, and then like at one point, I just like took everything off and just really focused on the art. And just like changed my life. Yeah, that was when I turned 40. So now I'm still, you know, it's been 12 years, I guess, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But I'm like at a really cool place right now where I'm enjoying the hell out of what I'm doing. But I do need to put the focus more.
I think that's beautiful, though.
Yeah. I
think that sometimes Instagram can be misleading about what entrepreneurship can be. Yeah, I feel like. It's not always what it's made out to be. Like, if entrepreneurship is what you really feel compelled to pursue, sometimes it's not going to make a lot of money. No. And that's why I love creating. Some passion.
So just like making these having an idea and then chasing it, it's fun. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Me too. Creating is like what fueled all this. Yeah. And not liking being told what to do. Yeah.
Yes. No, it's true. There's a level of, I mean, it's definitely the case for me too. Like I had a level of like not wanting to listen to other people anymore and not wanting to work for anybody else, not wanting my boss to be in charge of what I did every day. Mm-hmm. You know, in some ways it's selfish, but in some ways it was just like something that I had to do. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. But it is that. Yeah. It is a little bit of all that.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, well, definitely.
We're nearing the end, and I always ask if there's anything that you would like to talk about that we haven't talked about.
Oh my gosh. I can't think of anything. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to get home and be like, oh, why didn't I say this?
Shout out to Nativo. You're on Instagram at Nativo HLP, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then Xelas is at
House of Xelas with an X. Xelas.
Yes. And then
at Legacy Full Circle.
At Legacy Full Circle. Look all those things up to keep up with Corissa here.
Thank you.
And there's a question that we ask at the end of each podcast.
Okay.
That we ask everybody. It's a very vague question.
Okay.
But feel free to answer as vague or as precise as you want. I only ask that you try to answer in one sentence.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting nervous.
It's not that difficult. So like, if a being from another planet or a spirit from somewhere just came and like started to like look at you and your life trajectory and saw everything that you've done and everything that you've been to, they looked at you and they asked you one question, how would you answer? If they looked at you and said, Corissa, how do you do it?
I do it for my community.
I do it for my community. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh. This was such a great time. Thanks. I really appreciate being invited.
Likewise.
Yeah.
And we'll see you guys next week.